What's shaking, cats and kittens? Rob Lee here for this month's presenting sponsor, Night Owl Gallery. Night Owl Gallery is an intimate, artist-run exhibition space showcasing the original paintings and fine art prints of Beth Ann Wilson. Also, it features curated goods from local artists and craftsmen. You'll be sure to find one-of-a-kind gifts, handcrafted jewelry, home decor items, along with a few vintage treasures. Located in the rear of 248 South Conklin Street in Highlandtown, across from the Sally O's, Night Owl Gallery is a unique space that brings together Wilson's love of the arts, community, and culture. Additionally, Night Owl Gallery hosts an array of arts and crafts workshops throughout the year and participates in community events, many of which are free and open to the public. So in this ever-changing world, safety is their priority. So feel free to join them and hit them up online at www.nightowl.gallery. Tell them Rob Lee sent you. Welcome to Getting to the Truth in Its Art on MTR Podcast. I am your host, Rob Lee. And my next guest is a Baltimore-based artist, diorama maker, animator, and musician. His work has been featured in the U.S., Europe, and here locally in the AVAM, the American Visionary Arts Museum. We have Jim Doran. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rob. It's great to meet you.
It's great to meet you as well. I was going to start throwing in Duran Duran references, and I'm not going to because...
Man, I've never heard that before.
I'm sure you haven't. You can only imagine how many times I've gotten really ill-timed Robert E. Lee jokes because of my name.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah.
It's terrible. So I came across your stuff. Your stuff is super unique. You have an extensive like background. It's just like a list. You have the definitions of slash this, slash that. So if you will, describe your work and just what you do day to day as a creative and an artist in this area.
So my favorite thing is to make dioramas, tiny dioramas and recycled objects. And it really started for me because I've always felt like an artist. I've always wanted to make art. And I don't think I draw very well. And so I stumbled on this, I guess it was maybe 2011, where I started cutting out the drawings and making shadow boxes or things with depth of field. And then I did a little tiny one. It was in a iPod shuffle box. And then there's like this light bulb went off in my head, like, oh, this is it. I love doing this. And I think it kind of extends from the love of comics too, and that sort of graphic storytelling. So that's kind of how I got into the visual art stuff. And then I've been making music my whole life. My dad did all this stuff too. I get it from him. He didn't make dioramas, but just the artistic inspiration, I guess, came from him. So how's that?
No, that's great. So the music. So run back. You can't just glaze over the music. You can't just leave us there. It's like little comics, you diorama. So speaking of music, what kind of music are you doing?
Right now, I'm actually, okay. So I do animation and music. I studied music in my undergrad degree, and it was actually the only way I could get through college. I didn't take math, I took music theory, and that got me through that part of my life. When I got out of school, I played in punk bands and did all that stuff. And then I ended up being a music therapist for a while, which was really interesting. I was doing hand drumming circles in a geriatric hospital, nursing home setting, and it really kind of changed the way I thought about music. And I stopped playing with other bands. I stopped kind of performing in that way. So fast forward, music's always been super important to me, but when the animation happened, I became really interested in how sound and visual things go together. So to answer your question, the kind of music I'm doing now tends to support some visual effort. So it might be loop-based stuff or a rhythm that kind of backs something I'm working on. So
of course, so we're backtracking into each piece. We went from the dioramas, we went to the music. Now let's talk about the animation. So what got you into the animation and even speak on it? You said your dad was kind of did a lot of the stuff that you're working in. So how did that come about too? Was it something that was, here's my book of all of my tips and tricks? Was it one of those deals? Or how did that work out?
So my dad was a frustrated artist and he was a drummer. And so we always had drums in the house. And, when I was a kid, he actually took me to see Buddy Rich play at this place in Annapolis. And in between there were two shows. We went to the matinee, and the later show wasn't sold out. So Buddy Rich came out and he said, if anybody who wants to stay for the second show, go ahead, because we have lots of seats. So I had brought an LP with me, and I went up, he signed it for me. And then Dad and I walked on stage, and I started playing his drums. And this roadie came flying out of nowhere, and he's like, you cannot do this. And if you know Buddy Rich, he's got a pretty big temper. So we got off stage unscathed, and nothing bad happened. But Dad was a huge influence with music, and drumming in particular. I said he was a frustrated artist. He had been a contractor, and he had kind of run his own business for a long time. And then later in his life, he started doing graphic design. He was working for a place that did signs and t-shirts. And he told me, I guess I was in college, and he told me he wished he'd done that his whole life. And he said, I made all this money doing this other stuff, and I was always so scared. And if I could tell you one thing, it's do what makes you happy. And so yeah, that was really a great thing to hear from your dad. Yeah. So, and I think you asked about the animation. Sure. So I'm a web developer. That's how I make my living. And back when Flash was a thing, I used to fool around with animating in that. And so I got to go to grad school using tuition remission through work. Sure. And I applied for an MFA program at Towson, and I got in. And so I decided to focus on animation and stop motion in particular, and learning about kind of the history of that and techniques and stuff like that. And so I think that's why that's bubbled up to the forefront of what I'm doing now, was my work in grad school.
So it's like multiple things that are just coming together. It's like I take from here, take from there, and you're doing all of the things. Is there one particular area that of the various creative pursuits that you have that you're like, this is the one I would lead with. This is how if one were to do it, how I would define myself. Like, I am this. How would you define that? Or do you go more broadly and say you're an artist?
Well, I think artist is the way I would go. And I guess the way I would explain it is I can even widen it out a little bit more to like my professional life. So when I switched from doing music therapy, I took a couple of programming classes at CCBC. And what I realized is that language, they're all languages. Music theory is a set of rules that you use to compose music. And then JavaScript has a syntax, or PHP, or Visual Basic, or C++. So once you learn the rules, then you can be creative with it. And so in my brain, it's kind of all the same thing. And so the modality changes a little bit. But also I think about opera, like as an art form, there is singing, there is sometimes dancing, there's costume design, there's storytelling. And all of these things come together, all of these elements come together to make this one thing. And so animation is kind of like that for me. It involves drawing and cut paper, storytelling, and then I get to do sound with it. So that's kind of what's exciting to me about it. It's a lot of work, but it's really, really gratifying and satisfying, I think.
It's fantastic. So describe the importance, because I think people that do, I guess the polyglot thing, that's what I would call it, that are in that kind of like realm. Describe the importance of being in a company of other artists or creative types. Like, is it like almost like this? You get something that rubs off. How is that? How important is that for you?
That's a great question. When I started doing this, I was kind of alone. I was in a room trying to figure this out, and I was making my little dioramas, and I wasn't part of any art scene or anything like that. And I was like, well, what do you do? Well, you make enough work maybe to get a show. And okay, so I made enough pieces that I thought I could do that. And then I mailed a letter out to a couple galleries, and then I managed to get a show, and then it kind of expanded. But what's great is the community in Baltimore. And I feel like I've been lucky to be here and grow into that. I live in Hamilton, and I joined the Hamilton Gallery Collective up here on Harford Road. And I just, so at this point, I know people, and I enjoy, we all do different things, but I definitely enjoy watching them do what they do and how they grow. I don't know if you know Chris Bathgate. He's in my neighborhood. He's a sculptor, and he's got this incredible shop in his basement, and he makes these. You should talk to him if you haven't. He makes these great little. Some are large sculptures, some are smaller. He's like an engineer. He designs these things and he fabricates them. And so he and I really are very different in terms of what we do. But I'm so inspired by his process and his industry. You know, like how much he puts into it. And I listened to your interview with Erin Fostel, and I adore her work. And she's so nice. And I've just met so many great people along the way. So awesome city.
Yeah, it's really good to I think, even from my standpoint, like people remark upon like, man, you seem so interested. I was like, I am. I was like, these people have the different guests I've had on, they have different talents, and I consider myself a failed or a starving or struggling artist, and it's just like so many different talents, and I get that inspiration, whether it be some of the conversations I've had, like Aaron Hinken comes to mind, or even like Wendell Patrick, especially Aaron, where it's like you're doing a version of what I can see this ascending to be. And it's like, I want to pick your brain as much as possible. This is more of an inquisition than an interview. And you get something out of it, but definitely getting even an nth of that that inspiration is a big thing. So
you've done such a great service to the city, and the breadth of, like, you've talked to so many people, and not, I mean, like MST Spot, like it's so broad, the folks that you're connecting me to, right? So that's a huge service, and it's fantastic. I'm so impressed with what you've done here. So thanks for doing it. Yeah.
Thank you. It's you know, I love the city, and I like speaking with anyone that has something that, like I said earlier when we got started, this is a proudly Baltimore oriented podcast, and just really kind of connecting, you know, people. It's I've had those conversations before, like I even talked about Jax a little bit earlier, and just like, oh, I didn't know that you do this, and people don't know if they fit sometimes. It's like, you do fit, you know, you're part of the community, and the community here, and that's a theme that I've heard, is very inviting to people. It's like accessible in that way. It's like once you're here, you will find that tribe. It may not be always, but once you've gotten to that point where people know who you are and know what you're doing, then people will always look out for you. That's what I've seen, and that's what I believe is true. Yeah.
And I think maybe Aaron had said, like, you know, DC has a very different feel, and of course New York or even Philly. Like, I just, you know, you can be as weird as you want here, or do whatever, and there's a space for it. So I think it's great.
I mean, you know, being early in this podcast thing, 12 years in, and now it's like, oh, everyone's doing this now. Oh.
Yeah.
So I read that you started doing the dioramas back in 2010. What was your first or what was your most intricate diorama? Yeah.
That's a good one. So the first one was the iPod Shuffle that I mentioned earlier. It's downstairs. I could show you, but it's tiny, and it had the 4 horsemen on it, nice, which is a recurring theme that I go back to a lot, as skeletons. I think the most intricate was it's called Always, and it was in a soap tin. It was a vintage soap tin that opens up, and so there's a scene in the background, and then if you look down, there's an open casket, and you can see into the casket. So it's very 3-dimensional. And getting it to stay open, there's a ghost made out of tracing paper, and then a skeleton who's reaching for the ghost, and to get them to, like, stay interlocked and connected was it took me a long time to get that one to work. So that's probably the most intricate. They're all little problems to solve, like they're little puzzles, and it takes a little while to figure it out. I don't like to repeat myself. Yeah. I'll do it for a commission if somebody really wants to have one, but I don't like to do them twice.
I dig it. And even stepping back, like, so you have your soft web designer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you touched on, like, some of the different languages. Like I do SQL. I'm a data analyst day to day. And kind of touching on what you were saying with the dioramas, there's this little puzzle. And when you said it, it immediately hit me with the reason that I use SQL. So I like using SQL because it's always some new problem I'm trying to solve. And that's the thing that keeps me interested in it. If it was, oh, I could just run this, fine, I can do my day-to-day stuff, but I want to find a way to make that quicker or find a way to improve upon it and make it new and interesting, because ultimately when something becomes kind of like boring, you're looking for a new thing, and then that just gets you away from the thing that you care about.
Yeah, and SQL too, like it's so, and I like, whether you're open source or Microsoft, like stored procedures, like you can do so much in there. Yeah. And I worked for a while at a major university tuning stored procedures, and it was kind of dry, but it was fascinating. The level, like I think there's expression in that too, like how you do it and how you optimize things and stuff. So that's cool.
Everyone has their signatures within it or what have you. It's like, oh, you just throw your text in there. You just have all of your stuff in there. You don't care at all. Or it's like, oh, you have comments on. Okay, you actually care. It's like I'm leaving notes and breadcrumbs in there and such.
Yeah.
Share some of your. I think you touched on it earlier. Obviously, your dad's a piece in there. I think you mentioned Buddy Rich earlier. You mentioned I think a little bit about comics. So speak on some of your other creative influences.
Let's see. Well, musically, my girlfriend jokes all the time because I talk about Steve Vai a lot, the guitarist. Yeah. And when I was in my undergraduate program, at the end of my senior year, you had to do a project, and it could either be like an original composition, a thesis, or you took this comprehensive exam. So I went to study for the exam with my professor and realized that I couldn't pass the exam. And that night, this idea for a thesis popped into my head, which was the history of the electric guitar and rock music, and how the instrument got better based on player innovations. And then as the instrument evolved, players got better. So it flip-flopped back and forth through time. So I followed it all the way up. And at the time when I was in school, Ibanez had come out with the Gem, which is Steve Vai's guitar. And that was kind of the pinnacle for me at the time. So I'd written a term paper about him, and he played with Frank Zappa and David Lee Roth and Whitesnake. And then he has this extensive solo career, and he's done soundtrack stuff. I mailed him my paper. He had to put a solo record out, and there was a PO box on the back. And he wrote me back, and he's like, "I'd like to help you with your thesis. I'll be on tour with Whitesnake. Here's my number. Call and set up an appointment." And so I talked to him. He was great, and he was so kind. And I think his whole approach to music and I don't know, life, I just still find inspiration in that. But whenever I talk about him, my girlfriend falls asleep. It's like ZQL for her. So he's a huge influence. I really love Billy Martin as a drummer from Medeski, Martin and Wood. And I recently got up to New Jersey. He did a little loop workshop. It was for like 10 people in his studio. And I do a lot with loops, but I really just kind of wanted to go hang out. And here's a cool thing. I get there and we're introducing ourselves. And the first guy that talks says, "I'm from Baltimore." So we're in New Jersey above New York. Yeah. And I'm like, "Oh, what are the odds of that?" And so we start talking, and he's like, "Yeah, I live in Hamilton, Lauraville." And I was like, "Oh, we're neighbors." And so it turns out he plays drums with the Outcalls.
Really?
Often. Yeah. And so like we've become friends, and it just was this astonishing thing. So Steve Vai, Billy Martin, I love jazz music, and I love Mahler. I love a lot of classical stuff, 20th century. Like I really like everything except things that aren't very interesting. So
I dig it.
Noisy stuff is great.
So yeah, and thank you for sharing that. That's good. So if you are offered the opportunity to become, and this is my last three questions, offered the opportunity to become any superhero, I like a little comic flair in there. What superpower would you have?
Ooh. How many times have I asked myself that question? Boy. So are we talking about specific superheroes or a power?
Well, you know what? If you could become a superhero, so let's go with the power. Let's go power oriented.
Gosh. You can edit out this long pause, right?
Yeah, you're good.
You're good about it.
Yeah, you're good.
I always thought invisibility would be really useful, right? Because you could help somebody without being seen. Like that would give you the chance to get somewhere and do something.
Yeah.
But if you're not bulletproof or fireproof, then like you could get hurt.
Yeah.
I think I would take speed. I would take speed.
Okay.
Like I'd like to be able to move super fast.
A little flash energy there, I see.
Yeah. I think that would be super useful.
Let's just don't go backwards. Let's don't go back and start changing things and create a paradox. We don't need that. We don't need that.
Did you watch Loki? Have you seen that?
I have. I'm caught up on it. It's great.
Well, I was just talking with my daughter about this, and I was trying to explain. She was talking about What If, which is going to be the next round of things. And I was explaining how the comics work, that Marvel would cast this, these stories like what if Gwen Stacy had lived, or what if Doctor Doom was in the Fantastic Four or whatever. Mm-hmm. But we were talking about the time, what is it? The time in Loki, it's the
TVA.
The TVA.
Yeah.
And I was saying, it's funny that there's this arc in the story about timelines, and how like that's often how writers get out of stuff, is they change the story. They bring Superman back to life or whatever, and it almost feels like cheating a little bit sometimes, I think. Yeah. So I was kind of like, it's sort of this funny thing that they've woven that in, and the good part is when it like breaks out again and branches out. So yeah, I don't know what you think about that, but
yeah, I'm sitting there marking out, because like once I heard of the notion of the multiverse of madness, I was like, they've said the word multiverse, and I was like, this is how they're going to get to it. And it's like they're using the television series or the limited series to be a bridging mechanism to get to these next steps. And once you introduce time, and they did that in the whole quantum realm, you have different options that if you need to retcon something, or if you need to modify something, you can. And it's like, sometimes it feels a little lazy, but it's like, it's not like it's absent from the comic books. So I'm on the fence with it. I just want to see how it's executed. That's the way I always go with it.
Yeah.
So last two questions I have here.
Wait, are you going to ask me what hero I could be?
Please. Absolutely. Which hero?
I think I'd be Thor. I'm really obsessed with Thor. And there's a great, did you see Ragnarok on Netflix?
Did. Yeah, I did.
I really enjoyed that.
A lot of fun.
Neil Gaiman collected a bunch of Norse myths and kind of packaged them in a way that I don't know if they were lost or you had to dig for them, but there's something so appealing about all that. So
yeah, I mean,
thank you.
Yeah, no, totally. When we utilize like things that are either old folklore or mythology and things like that, and it's modified, like what is it? American Gods, like that comes to mind, or have you, or even Supernatural. I was a big Supernatural head.
Yep.
So you see something that comes from just different folklore, different mythology, and it's like, oh, you've updated it, you modified it to fit within the parameters of the show that you created. That interests me, even to a lesser degree. I didn't really watch much of it, but Grimm, kind of in that same kind of way. So yeah, I mean, I want to see more of that. I want to see I want to see it have a black or colored slant to it, like POC kind of slant to it, because there's so many different types of things that are out there, and I feel like generally we only cover certain segments. I think it's just so many more broader stories that you can get, and I think that could be really interesting. There was this one show called Monsterland that really wasn't that good, but there were certain things about it that I liked, specifically when they had this New Orleans episode. And I was like, okay, yeah, I love New Orleans. I was like, because this is interesting. And yeah, I don't know.
So what powers would you have?
Speed caught my attention. Probably flight. I mean, I don't know how many. I'm 300 pounds. I don't know how many how big of wings I'm gonna need, of like these albatross wings or something. But I like to be able to say, all right, I'm out of here, and I just fly away.
Yeah.
I'm running late. Let me just fly there real quick.
Yeah.
But I'd imagine the almost the Archangel wings from like X-Men. As far as superheroes, I've always had a predilection towards Colossus from the X-Men.
Yeah.
Just if I'm playing the arcade joint and he just does the flash and he's just metal for a second, it's great.
Yeah. He's awesome.
Most treasured possession. If let's say you're in your creative space, and let's say you have different things in there that you elicit like energy from, right? And something is happening where you can only grab one thing. and you got to get out of there, what is the one thing that you're definitely grabbing? What's that most prized possession for you?
Well, for art, it's hold on, where is it? It's this X-Acto blade. It's this handle. I've had it since college. I've used it for everything. And so I would hate to lose this, right? Yeah. It's just a thing, but I would definitely grab this. And if it was music, I saved up and I got a gem, the Ibanez gem, the guitar I referenced earlier. And I don't play like Steve Vai. I'm not a shredder. I don't play like that. But that guitar is such a pleasure to hold. Yeah. And I think each instrument kind of inspires a way you touch it. Some are like cool for surf music, or some things are for jazz or whatever. And that guitar inspires me. So I would take that too. Okay. If I could only have one thing, I would take the gem, because it costs a lot more than this handle. But those two items, I think, are my favorite possessions.
I dig it. I'm probably taking my first mixer. I still have my old I have a Fast Track Pro that I got in 2009, and it was like, it wasn't super expensive, but it was just like I do another podcast. It's a comedy podcast, and for the longest time, I had this away with some of my old equipment. You know how you go back to stuff, and it's like, I can still use this in a different way. So I have this nice Behringer mixer that I'm using right now, but on occasion, it's like Behringer mixer isn't really doing what I wanted to do, so let me switch back to the Fast Track. And there was a sticker on there that one of my ex co-hosts put on, and he called it like Universal Fart Machine. And I was like, I hate this guy. I hate him. And I happened to notice it when I wanted it. I was like, I was like, what the hell is this? And it was a bright orange sticker. I was like, you're a dick. All right. So this is the last question that I have.
Okay.
Share your most marked characteristic. If someone was like, this is Jim in one word, what do you think it would be? Or what would you call it if you're pitching it out there?
Oh, it depends on who you talk to, I guess.
That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Back of the jacket, autobiography.
I think so. If we just keep it in the art realm, sure, since that's what we're talking about, I would have to say patience, because I have a lot of patience to do the various things I do. They're all fussy, time-consuming, ridiculous things that, so Altoids, people will be like, oh, I really want to do that. And I'll say, we'll do it. Here, it's not hard. Like you can do this, but nobody wants to, because it takes a lot of patience, and it's sort of frustrating, I think. So it can be, Mm-hmm. So hopefully that's accurate.
I definitely, because you kind of give me those vibes in terms of the work that you're doing specifically with the dioramas mm-hmm. of what Rosa Leff does. She's a paper cut artist, and it's like, mm-hmm. so she's taking like pictures and then basically redoing the pictures, but done with like an X-Acto knife. Mm-hmm. And it's like, hold up, so that's your drawing implement, the X-Acto knife? I was like, oh, you're patient, aren't you? You're meticulous and all of that. I used to be very meticulous with this podcast. I would, or just podcasting as a medium, I would go through and look for every silence, mm-hmm. and just trimming it out. And I would pretty much, for like an hour-long podcast, I would work on it for 2 hours to get it as pristine as possible. And then I started looking at it and realizing, and this is just for this medium, that it starts to lose the nature of what it is. It's a conversation. There are going to be there are going to be pauses and things like that. So kind of finding that happy balance between the two. But definitely when you mention like patient, I am very patient in it, but also it's like, all right. So what ultimately is the intent here? That's what I try to get back to.
Yeah, I think I definitely leave a lot of mistakes and stuff now. And I would rather make more things than like one thing that's really perfect or pristine. So that was like a good development, to be able to let go of stuff. And I don't know, humor is really important to me too. Like having things be, I don't know if people think what I do is funny, but I intend a lot of it to be funny, and it's funny to me. So I get a kick out of that.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, and you've listened to a few episodes to know what happens now at the end of the episode. Shameless plug time. So please plug away your social media, all of that stuff. And again, thank you. This has been really fun, actually. And this is the first interview I've done in a few weeks. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about this one.
Well, thank you. This is my first interview ever, so I will never forget it, and I appreciate it. I can be found at jimdoran.art. That's my website. My Instagram is jimdoran.art. I would go to the website. Everything's there. The animation site and everything is linked off of that. I have a show at Maryland Art Place right now. I'm part of a show, the Young Blood exhibit, which was for MFA grads from the pandemic time. And I'm working on an animation right now, which will be in the city of Denver. They have all these LED billboards around the city. It's a silent screen type thing. They're shorts. So if anybody's in Denver, I actually forget when it is. The Denver Digerati is putting it on, and that's what I'm frantically trying to finish right now. And that's really what I've got going on.
Well, thank you so much. That's cool. And definitely check out your website for all of the upcoming stuff. Everything's there.
Yeah.
So again, thank you so much. So for Jim Doran, I am Rob Lee saying that there's art in and around Baltimore. You just got to look for it.